Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all for introducing yourselves. I'm Ben Davidson. I work down in engineering, the dark side of IT. That's trademarked, Austin Gallagher. Thank you. I'm a software architect. I work with two teams, well, a bunch of teams right now, but primarily with two teams. And I C#. Also, I about a year ago started teaching Intro to Programming at BYU, Idaho. So if this were a different setting, we could get you some college credit, but can't do that here. Sorry. But anyway, this is probably the sixth time we've taught Intro to C#, and the reason I've got this microphone here is this. All right. Today we have this nice big group, right? What are there? 20 of us in here. If I were to draw you a diagram of attendance, it would always look like this. We'd be going downhill the entire time because each session builds on the previous sessions, and when you miss one, it's really difficult to catch back up. So I'm actually going to record each session, post it on YouTube, and get you the link. So if you can't make it to one session, feel free to go back and watch the recording on YouTube. I can't get you lunch at that point, but anyway, you will be able to be caught up. Okay. Yeah, we are going to be, so this class title is Intro to Programming C#. Okay, a lot of the techniques and things that we will learn can be applied to any number of languages. It just so happens that we are going to learn C#, right? But before you can learn a programming language, you need to learn these programming constructs that exist in many different languages. For example, at BYU, Idaho, we teach Intro to Programming with JavaScript, right? And almost all of the course content from that course could be applied here with a C# skin. So I want you to think of this as an Intro to Programming course where we happen to use C#. But honestly, once you master these skills, you will know JavaScript, you will know Java, you will know C++, you'll know a lot of different languages just because of the concepts that we'll learn. So we focus more on Intro to Programming than the C#, but we are going to use C#. I just want to give you a few ways that C# is used here at Health Equity. Okay, everyone has logged on to the website here at Health Equity, hopefully? Yeah. Okay, so the website here at Health Equity uses C#, right? On the front end, we use HTML and JavaScript, but on the back end, all of the, let's say all of the functionality, all of the get my HSA balance and get my list of transactions, all of that is brought to you by C# code, okay? Some of you said you work here with the file transmissions, right? So we send and receive lots of different kinds of files here at Health Equity. We receive files that say, create an HSA for Shelly because she's a new employee at Google, right? Or Shelly has just been fired from Google, close her out, right? And so forth. So we receive files that do enrollment, basically, is one way we could say it, or de-enrollment, disenrollment, unenrollment. I don't know. Yeah. Okay, we receive files that say put $100 into Shelly's HSA or take $100 out of Shelly's HSA. We receive files that do that. All of those files that we send and receive have to be processed by a computer program. And here at Health Equity, all of the programs that process files are written in C#, right? We have lots of files that we send out. For example, if you use investments, we send trades to Charles Schwab to actually do the investments. The thing that takes your button clicks from the investment desktop and puts them in a file is C#, right? So when you're done with this course, you could do all of that. I'm just kidding. No. Intro. Okay, maybe you've used the mobile app here at Health Equity. The mobile app doesn't use C#, but it communicates with web services or APIs that are written in C#. So the app would be completely useless. Nobody laugh. Completely useless without C# APIs, okay? And maybe some of you have used the console application. That application is written in C#. So here at Health Equity, C# is our programming language. And yeah, those are some usages of C#. And I'm going to cross off things on my list. Right back here, Natalie.
Can you just explain why there are different languages just a little bit?
Sure. So Natalie asked the question, why are there different languages? And that's because every programmer thinks they're brilliant and wants to invent something. So I will say that some of the first programming languages, like C, a lot of the programming languages we have today are based off of C. So C#, C++, Objective-C, Java, all of those things are based off of C, one of the early languages. The reason we have different languages are for different like operating systems, different computers, different instances. For example, Java is another programming language that can run on basically any computer where the Java framework is installed. C#, until recently, could only run on Windows machines. So all of your Linux machines or your Mac OSs, we couldn't run C#, right? So Objective-C is something that they use that will only run on iOS, right? So people create programming languages for different jobs. If I want to build an app that goes on a Mac, then I'm going to use Objective-C, right? If I'm going to build iOS apps, I'm going to use, I don't even remember what it's called, Swift, something? Swift, yeah. I know things. Yeah, so I guess that's what I would say there. There's a variety of languages to solve different problems, right? I hope that made sense. Okay. I just want to show you real quick this lovely article. This compares Java versus .NET. .NET, for the purposes of this course, you can substitute .NET with C#, right? It's not exactly the same thing, but for this course, it's the same thing. Okay, here's some differences. For example, this lovely graph. This graph along the bottom shows websites that use different languages. There are, so the further to my right, the further to the right a dot is, it's used by more websites, and the higher up a dot is, it's used by higher traffic websites. So you can see here, ASP.NET. This is, you can call it C#, it's basically C#, right? This is used by lots of high traffic websites versus Java, it's used by fewer high traffic websites, right? Prevalence of C# is growing. Here is a very helpful graph. Job postings, right? The yellow line are .NET or C# jobs. They're the second highest out there as compared to Java. It's the first highest, and then some other languages here. So lots of opportunity out there for C#. Same kind of deal here. .NET, second place to Java. Okay. Here's another website that shows similar information. For example, server-side programming languages, ASP.NET is, since January 1st, 2019, is the second highest used. Okay. And maybe something that you would be interested in, if I were to go out to DICE, which is a service that shows me tech jobs, if I were to type in C# and look for jobs, oh man, so many jobs, even here in Lehigh, right? So if you know C# and if you can write programs in C#, you got some opportunity ahead of you. C# is very widely used. Any questions about that? Okay, I want to talk a little bit about how each course is going to go. It's going to be rough. I apologize. I'm extremely awkward. So here I've got, everybody is on the Teams Lunch Learning channel, yeah? Hopefully. You don't have to be, but here on the Teams Lunch Learning team, there is a channel called Y4S1 Intro to Programming, right? A lot of the communication that I will post before or after class will be here. But most importantly, I've got this wiki page. This wiki page I'm going to update before and after class every day. This is where the video links for class will be posted, right? I'm going to upload the recordings to YouTube and then post them here. Here are some terms, because a lot of tech is jargon, right? A lot of, like, you need to know terms, but everyone's saying words and it's tough to understand them. These are a lot of the terms that we are going to use on day one, and I'll try to keep this updated as much as possible. And we've also got other resources. For example, one of the prerequisites to the course was you needed to have Visual Studio Code installed. Here's the download link for that. Here's a step-by-step tutorial to make sure that everything is configured correctly. We're going to go through that a little later, and some extra resources which we will talk about. Okay, so we've got the videos. This is where I'm going to try and post them same day. When you miss a course, come here like by 3 o'clock, and hopefully we've got the course uploaded. Jargon or glossary terms will be before class. Extra resources will be before class. Okay, and I think, so like I've said, I've taught this course probably 6 times. I've helped several people actually get a job in engineering. Not that I've done it all myself. Eric is one, right? And the thing that I notice about people like Eric who work their way into engineering or gain C# skills like Jeremy Wagner, because he does a lot of C# now, is practice, right? You need to practice. And so a large part of our courses, each session is going to be what we call a code along assignment. I'm going to write code up here on the whiteboard. I would urge that you follow along and write code with me, right? So that you can get a chance to practice. We'll also each session have some coding assignments. So you will get a chance to write some code on your own, or you can team up with your buddies or people sitting next to you, and we'll get a chance to practice. So just expect that. Some presentations, some code along, and finally, the last 4 days of this course will be like a capstone project where we build an app from start to finish. And it's going to be a fun little app. It's going to be an HSA future teller program, right? So we're going to answer a few questions like, what is your name? What is your quest? How old are you? How many kids? Right? And then we're going to push a button, and our app is going to show us how our HSA will grow or decrease over the years. For example, it will say if such events as broken leg, January 1st, 2019, minus $5,000. Right? We're going to build that app. I'm going to give you the tools, all of the tools that you need to build that app. Okay, any questions about course overview? Is anyone not on the Lunch Learning Teams channel? Everybody hopefully knows how to get there. Okay, you can get there?
I can get it.
Okay. Let me know how that goes. Thank you. Okay, as I mentioned, a prerequisite to this course was getting Visual Studio Code downloaded on your machine. Has anyone not done that? Oh, everyone did it. Oh, all right. Okay. Well, we're going to go through and talk about Visual Studio Code. First off, Visual Studio Code is what we call an IDE. So you can see that's one of my terms here. An IDE stands for an Integrated Development Environment. Okay, all that means is it's a program that you will use to write your code. Okay, if you have ever watched some of the old school coders write code, they do it in a program that's basically Notepad, right? And it's really tough, and you have to be hard as nails in order to do that. Okay, an IDE does such things like it highlights your code. If you write bad code, it will put a little red squiggly line like a misspelled word in Microsoft Word. It will give you hints about what's wrong. Okay, this is what an IDE is. For example, an IDE that we use at BYU Idaho, because it's free and we do JavaScript, is Notepad++. Maybe, actually, I think this is installed on all of our computers here at Health Equity. Right, so IDE, little did you know, or Notepad++ is an IDE. You can see here this JavaScript code that I don't think we need to understand. It highlights certain parts of the code and gives different styling and gives me some tips, right? So this is an opening curly bracket. There's its closing curly bracket. This is the sort of thing that an IDE does for you. Syntax highlighting. It highlights code, okay? Another thing that an IDE can do for you is facilitate running code. So I can launch this HTML page in Chrome, and voila, wait for it, a beautiful HTML page where if I say it's snowy, it tells me to wear boots. Okay, does anyone have any questions about what an IDE is, Integrated Development Environment.
I was just wondering which ones we use here.
So here at Health Equity, down in engineering, we use a version of Visual Studio, right? It's Visual Studio, it depends on your role, right? Visual Studio 2017 Ultimate is what I use. But here in this course, the IDE that we will use is Visual Studio Code. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open a folder to show you all of the neat stuff that Visual Studio Code does. Okay, so Visual Studio Code is an IDE, much like Notepad++. It's brought to us by Microsoft, and it is built to facilitate writing C# code. Okay, you can write other languages in here. For example, some students at BYU Idaho are using Visual Studio Code to write their JavaScript programs, and it gives you a lot of the same benefits that Notepad++ does. But we cannot use Notepad++ to write C# code. We have to do an IDE that adds another feature called compiling. And you don't need to know much about compiling other than it's the process, it's magic. It turns the code that you write into the instructions for the computer. Okay? So here we are, the Visual Studio IDE. There are a couple things we need to talk about in here. So first off, I'm going to refer to a line of code many times, line of code. When I refer to line of code, I'm just talking about one line in a file. For example, this is line of code number 9. Everyone can see that, yeah? Right, lines of code belong to a function. So a function contains one or more lines of code. Right? And we will have a whole day devoted to functions, but for now, just know that a function is a container for one or more lines of code. Okay, a container for many functions, one or more functions, is called a class. Right? So a class contains one or more functions, and then classes are contained in a file. You notice that this file over here on the left, program.cs, it ends in a .cs, so you're familiar with file extensions, right? .html, .txt, .sql. .cs is a C# file, right? So this tells me that this is C# code. A C# file can contain one or more classes. And then the very top level container is a project. This project can contain multiple C# files, okay? And this IDE gives us a nice little view here of all of that, right? So line of code, function, class, C# file, project. Okay? Any questions about the organization of our code here in Visual Studio Code? Pause here for questions. Counting on 5 minutes of questions. No, I'm not. Okay. I want to introduce you to two concepts here. One is running your code, and the other is debugging your code. Okay, with Visual Studio Code, if I want to run my code, first off, what does run my code mean? Veracode, shut up. Okay, run my code basically means I want to compile it and I want to make it do what I said it's going to do. So for example, right now, the only thing that this program is going to do is type out to the console, hello world. I can run my code by coming here into Visual Studio and saying .NET run. And you'll see that the console, this little area down here, types out hello world. Oh man, it's getting crazy, right? So that is running my code. The code executes from top to bottom, each line of code running in sequence, and it does a thing and then it finishes, okay? So running your code can be helpful. It's a way that you see if your code is working or not, but more often than not, you're gonna do a thing called debugging, okay? Debugging is stepping through my code line by line, right? And pausing and seeing the value of, or the state of my program in a couple different places, okay? So debugging, running is just, it runs from top to bottom, no interruptions. Debugging is I can introduce interruptions, I can make the program pause so I can check its state, and I can do the things which I'm about to show you, okay? So I'm going to do something called place a breakpoint. You can see now there's this red dot right here by line number 9. A breakpoint says when someone is debugging, pause the program, keep it from continuing to run, pause it at this line, okay? So in order to debug in Visual Studio Code, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say debug, start debugging, some output here to the console, and eventually, well, bam, it highlights this line of code and says, I am stopped right here on line 9. I'm not going to proceed until you tell me to proceed, okay? So debugging, stepping through my code line by line. We're going to do so much debugging this during this course, okay? And we talked about a breakpoint. A breakpoint is where I tell my program to pause. Now there are 4 different actions that you can.
Yeah, how did you place the breakpoint?
Okay, placing a breakpoint, all you got to do is right here, right to the left of a line number, you click.
Yeah.
And then if you want to remove a breakpoint, just click on the breakpoint. Okay? So the program has paused here. There are a couple different actions I can do. Step over, step into, step out, continue, or stop. So step over isn't going to make a whole ton of sense for a while until we get to functions, but here are the buttons to continue, step over, step into, step out, or stop. Never touch this one. I'm just kidding, you can if you want. Okay, step over basically says I want to let the next line of code execute and then stop after that line of code is done executing, right? So I just stepped over that line of code. And down here in the console, we got 1 hello world. I'm going to step over again, step over again, step over again, step over again. Done. My program is done. The program exited with code 0. Okay, to illustrate what step into means, I'm going to come down here and write some code. Okay. So all of this hopefully will make sense one day, but just for now, know that I have written 2 functions here. I've got a function called main and a function called say hello again. From the main function, I'm going to step into the say hello again function. Okay. So let's debug. I'm going to hit F5, which is a shortcut for debugging. I'm going to come out here, I'm going to execute those several lines of code, and I stop right on line 14. So step over will say, go ahead and execute the lines of code in here, but I don't want to see them execute one by one. That's what step over does. And you can see hello again, hello again, hello again, hello again. Okay, I can actually make my program rewind by grabbing that guy. Nope, you can't do that in Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to debug again, but this time I'm going to step into. So this means I actually do want to go in and step into this function, and I want to see every line of code execute. So step over means go ahead and execute the lines, but I don't want to see them execute one by one. Step into means I do want to see them execute one by one. Okay? And then I will continue to let the program finish. And finally, step out is not what you're thinking. Step out. So we step into this function to say, I want to see these lines of code execute one by one. And then I get to the second line, I'm like, man, I'm tired of this. So I want to step out. I want to bump out of this function. I want to let these lines of code execute, but I don't want to see them execute one by one. I come back to where the function was called, and then I keep going. Okay, so those are, and then continue just lets the program run. So those are some useful things you can do while you're debugging your code. And I hope that you refer back to those steps when it comes time for you to write some programs. Okay, does anybody have any questions about debugging before we start doing our Hello World app? Okay. All right, it is time now for you to do some practicing. So has everyone opened Visual Studio Code? If you haven't, go ahead and open Visual Studio Code and get to this screen right here.
I'm trying the wrong version.
If you have the wrong version, Eric will be happy to help you create a console application. All we need is a console application, Eric. That's fine. It's fine. Okay, very first, Visual Studio Code, you should see this little button right over here, Explorer, right? You want to click on that and you should get a button like this that says Open Folder. Okay, when you are ready, click that button and I want you to go somewhere to specify a new folder. So I'm going to go to my desktop and I'm going to right click and say New Folder, and I'm going to say Ben's Hello World. It can be named anything. Okay, so I'm going to let that be created, and then I'm going to select that folder. I'm going to select that folder. There we go. So hopefully everyone has created and selected a folder. You could choose to use an existing folder. I choose not to. Okay. Next, you should go to View and Terminal. By the way, the steps that I'm following here, you can find these steps later. In the other resources, ensure you are up and running by following these steps. I'm going to click that link. Okay, all of these steps should show you everything that I'm about to show you. And you can follow them later if you want, or the video. But they are in other resources. Okay, I'm here. I've clicked View, Terminal, brought up this, and I'm going to say in this folder, I want .NET to create a new console application. .NET new console. Right? What this is going to do is create all the necessary files for me to create a console application. I hit Enter.
Does it just like auto create a name for it?
So yes, it auto creates a project with the same name as your folder. So my project is named Ben's Hello World.cs proj, which matches the folder that I created.
I got an error.
Etang, go.
Same error probably. Term .NET is not recognized. My console's not working. My shift, is that just white? Yours?
Oh, you don't have any.
That's what.
So did you add the entire desktop folder
Yeah.
as your workspace?
Yeah.
Okay, did anyone have it work?
Yeah.
Right back here?
Yeah.
You go, girl.
How would we change where our folder is?
So I'll do that real quick. I'm going to go File, Close Folder. I'm going to do this again. I'm going to say File. Actually, I'm going to go to Explorer, Open Folder. And here, I can use the File Explorer. This time I'm going to go to Documents, and I'm going to go to, oh, I don't know. I'm going to create a new folder. New folder. Hello, hello.
Are we creating a project or a file?
You should be creating a project. So I'm going to select the hello, hello. Select folder. I'm going to go View, Terminal, .NET New Console.
Do we need to call like .NET Restore?
Yes. Yes, I have done that, and I have skipped this step. I have failed you. I will now commit the harikai.
So if you don't have it, but don't restore.
So yes, there's a command here that, no, that should come after. That should come after.
Oh, do we need to create
Okay, I'm going to pause the recording here for 1 minute while we troubleshoot. Okay, we did some troubleshooting here, so I'm going to continue with our program here. I've just created a program.cs file. So again, we've got a C# file that contains a class, which contains a function, which contains a line of code here. Okay. When you get to this point, required assets to build and debug are missing. Should I add them? Yes. Okay. Then, when you want to debug, this little cute icon here with the bug, we come here, you click that. As I'm debugging, we'll be able to see values of all of our variables and whatnot. But for now, I'm going to place a breakpoint right here. .NET Core launch. Let's debug. Okay, some output to the console here. Becomes our line of code. I'm going to step over and hello world. So the thing that I was hoping that each of you could do, if you didn't have broken computers, was to make this say something else, like something insightful, like hello world, I am Ben, son of Albert, and I am here to destroy you. Okay? Just alter your program to do something cute like that. Okay, step over. Hello world, I'm Ben, son of Albert, and I'm here to destroy you! Exclamation point. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and end the recording. I'm going to continue to help troubleshooting computers and problems here in the room, but that is a brief overview of Visual Studio Code, of programming in general, IDEs, and the structure of programs. Yeah, there you go. Ending text here.